That's Nick.
And that's Joseph, and today we're here to talk about All Day and a Night, the sophomore film directed by Joe Robert Cole, which is available to stream on Netflix May 1st, 2020.
This director's first film
is a 2011 thriller called Amber Lake, which I have not seen. He's better known as the co-writer of Black Panther, which he wrote with Ryan Coogler, of course. And he also wrote 2 episodes of American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace,
which I really enjoyed.
Yes.
All Day and a Night is about a young man named Jahkor, who in the opening scene we see him killing a man and a woman. And then we flash back 13 years. 13 years, 13 months?
13 years to his childhood.
Oh. But the story basically takes place like 13 months prior and how he got involved in the situation that led to the murder of this man, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Set in Oakland, California. Obviously, Mr. Cole, based on also my remembrance of Black Panther, is most likely from there.
Has ties to Oakland.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This was an interesting film.
I would say this film, if you could have made a Hallmark Hall of Fame blaxploitation film, it would feel like All Day and a Night, which has actually quite a good cast. Ashton Sanders plays Jahkor as a young man, of course, from Moonlight. He was in a contemporization of Native Son that I did not like. And also he's in Equalizer 2, so he's an up-and-coming actor, gives a decent performance. And then, of course, Jeffrey Wright playing his father, who I thought was a little bit miscast.
Well, so when I read the synopsis, the thing that stuck out to me was a young man ends up in the same prison as his father. That's like the main plot point in the synopsis. So that's really interesting. But this film doesn't really, it's kind of all over the place.
It is.
I don't even know where to begin with the story.
Well, it's very much on a soapbox. It plays like a soap opera in several scenes.
Okay, let me try to run down the story as quickly as I can. So when Jahkor so we flash back 13 years to when he was like an adolescent, and we find that he had a rough childhood. He grew up in the Oakland, I'm assuming like in the hood. His dad, Jeffrey Wright, is kind of like he's a drug addict, and also seems like he's just a general like fucks up a lot. Yeah. His parents don't get along. Jahkor's not doing well in school. He sees his dad using. Then we flash forward to like present time, 13 months prior to the murder, and he's just kind of loafing about. He has a girlfriend, he gets her pregnant, he gets involved with like a drug dealer / like rapper or music producer. Stunna. And he's just like having a hard time, like, because there are all these obstacles like in his way, like very stereotypical like benchmarks of like the Black American experience, which are very valid, but in this film it's like every fucking benchmark is on display, which I think is tedious. But anyway, he kind of has a breakdown at a point because he gets arrested at one point because he's driving around in a white neighborhood. His mom and her boyfriend bail him out. He has an episode
right outside the police station.
He just is like prone to being in trouble. But the people he's involved with who sell drugs, they need a gentleman like taken care of, and he volunteers to kill this person. And he does.
And we finally come to realize. And
the twist, because in the beginning, when he kills the guy, he says, like, do you remember me? And obviously the guy's like, fuck no, I don't remember you. We find out that man he killed in the beginning of the movie is the man he used to see his dad buy drugs from. The end. You go, like. So I had a lot of issues. First of all, the film, after watching it, reminded me of a lot of really great movies, like Moonlight, like Boys in the Hood,
early John Singleton. I think
Poetic. I also thought that the sort of the side plot of Poetic Justice with Janet Jackson and Tupac, like when he goes up to Oakland and his cousin are trying to like do rap, and his cousin gets killed in some street activities, and then he blames Janet for the for like distracting him. I felt like if the Tupac character had like a sequel based on that storyline, then All Day and a Night kind of reminded me of that. Sure. You said it also reminded you of a white movie. What was it?
There are a couple white movies. Well, especially
Prizzi's Honor.
Prizzi's Honor, because there's this. The screenplay does a lot of telling and not showing, and one of those things is about his friend TQ and about the notion of loyalty and how that is. That's
important, but they don't demonstrate it. They just say it.
They don't demonstrate, but it gives a third act twist in prison when they're all in prison together, which is reminded me of Prizzi's Honor a little bit. But also, as you might have already said, and we both said when we were speaking about this film, the most interesting aspect really is the father and son in prison at the same time, which also has been done in film before. There's a Yolanda Ross's breakthrough, I think it's called Stranger Inside, in the early 2000s, directed by Cheryl Dunye, does that. Starred Up with Ben Mendelsohn and Jack O'Connell. It also reminded me a little bit of Carol Reed's classic Fallen Idol, in a film by Sheldon Candace called Love with Common, also about these children that are exposed to these adult male figures that let them down. So there's a lot of those familiar themes there.
I had issue with just like I said, every benchmark of like the Black American experience, and as it relates to like systemic racism, just general hardships, and why it's difficult for many people of color to get ahead. And again, those are very valid things.
Yes.
But in a film where you check every box, it just was exhausting. I mean, there's like a scene where Jahkor is in like a shoe store and he's working, and this white woman walks in and immediately asks him like, "What are you doing here? This seems weird that you're here," and walks out. Him getting pulled over by the police. There's a sequence where he's calling like a 30-second sequence of him trying to like apply for jobs, and he's just being turned down left and right.
All of the few white characters in this are really terribly written.
So there's a white girl who works with him, and the way she's talking is just like, it reminds me of that Bad Bobby. I'm old. I don't know these people's names, but the girl on the Dr. Phil show who said "Catch Me Outside." How about that?
Okay, yeah.
But she's like that character. Then the white cop who's interrogating him when Jahkor is arrested for driving in a white neighborhood is like is so out of control. It's like if Tyler Perry wrote the script for like the next 48 hours. It was just so awful.
I was thinking an SNL. Well, that's nice. I was thinking that like an SNL skit was the white people in this film.
Lastly, for me, what I think where this really took a miss for me is I feel like this is like the Bay Area version of Boys in the Hood, right? But Boys in the Hood to me feels like a love letter to South Central LA. Like John Singleton seems like he loved where he's from and he wanted to show that area. So yes, there was a lot of hardship and a lot of bad things happen in that film, but I feel like we got some joy.
Well, you also remember those characters.
And the characters have like oh my God.
Sanders, as good as I think that he is as an actor, this character's very
flat and it was just kind of miserable watching, and it doesn't take you anywhere. Because we know the problem is it starts off with him killing someone, and so he's in trouble. So we already know his shit is fucked up. And throughout the film, he's just fucking miserable. 2 hours of watching this character just be so fucking miserable. The one thing that you would think would bring him joy, which is his music, he doesn't even look happy recording the music. Then he plays it for someone and he's fucking miserable doing that. I didn't really get the sense of the Bay Area, and maybe because I'm from Southern California, I don't get a lot of the references, but I don't think that it showed. Like, I recognize some of the vernacular because I listened to E40, so I recognize some of that. But like the actual locations, it didn't seem like that film could have been shot anywhere where there's concrete and buildings.
One thing I wanted to point out, because I thought it was curious and I had written it down, was the flashback that goes 13 years prior, and then there's the other flashback 13 months prior to the film. And I'm like, 13.
Oh, this was your in-depth analysis.
I'm like, is this like 13's an unlucky number? I'm like, oh no, this is the 13th Amendment. the abolition of slavery and how our contemporary prison systems are really is modern day slavery. So I think that is what Mr. Cole, the statement he's trying to make. It's just that there's so many layers.
Which is very interesting.
Yes, and very valid. And
this just feels like, when you get a chance to do something and you want to throw everything in there.
Which makes me think...
It's not subtle at all.
Because the best parts to me of Black Panther are how the villain, played by Michael B. Jordan, seems so rational and his motivation seems so plausible to me. But in this, what's a fucking science fiction film, seem much more eloquent, I think, than what's here. Like there's that long monologue, there's all this voiceover narration from Jahkor that, and some of it's repeated, like the instance about how slavery taught Black people how to stay alive but not how to live.
Again, there are a lot of very good points.
Yes, of course,
that I think could have been like cut that shit in half and develop those ideas better.
And I do really like Jeffrey Wright. I just think that he, even in the flashbacks, he seems a little too old.
Okay, and then my last problem is the entire reason for Jahkor really ruining his life is because he kills this man, because he says the flashback 13 years prior, Jahkor as a kid walks up to the drug dealer and says, "Hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. My dad is blah, blah, blah. Could you please stop selling him drugs?" And then the drug dealer says, "No, he's my best customer. Get the fuck out of here." Okay, so he holds on to this, and then that's what's the impetus for him, or the motivation for him killing Malcolm in the beginning. Okay, but Jeffrey Wright's character, as he's killing Malcolm, he's in prison, he looks quite healthy.
You could be a high functioning addict.
But the point is, he didn't die. It would be one thing if that drug dealer was the reason my mom overdosed and died when I was a kid. But your dad was just a crackhead. And then the film goes to some length to explain, Jeffrey Wright's character says, everyone in the hood is going to end up like me. Basically, we're all the same. So I just don't understand. And then because Jahkor's character doesn't really express anything or explain anything, I don't understand why he thinks that his dad would have been different, because he's not different. So I don't understand why someone like Jahkor would have this feeling, but his dad is still alive.
Yeah.
So it just didn't work for me. That being said, I really like seeing Black filmmakers making films featuring Black people, and I want to see Black stories. But this just felt it's just too much. It's too long. There's too much shit in it. Too many messages. It felt like an assignment watching it. It was not. I didn't enjoy it. I just felt like it was like I was doing homework or something.
Sure, I don't have a problem with too many messages, but it's just the way they're told was kind of jumbled and all over the place, and that scene where
there's no fun in it.
The PTA sequence with his mom. That's.
Oh my God, it's just so many things. And then I think if you're from Oakland and you're trying to make a film repping Oakland, doesn't it make sense that you would showcase some brevity, there's some joy? There's only one scene where Jahkor seems like he's happy, and that's his girlfriend who he gets pregnant. They have a bubble bath. That's the only scene where he seems like he kind of is enjoying himself. But it's just a miserable ass story.
There are no bright spots.
And Oakland is not shown as a cool ass place to live.
Right.
Also, another thing that I have an issue with is the timing. And I don't know if it was the costume design or the set design. I don't know who's in charge of setting the tone of the flashbacks, but I was very confused what year I was in, because some of the references seem very early 90s to me, but then the cars were early 2000s, and then if it's set in present time, then 13 years back would have only been 2007.
Which is curious because the film's screenplay is taking pains to make sure we get all the other messages except for orienting us in the
I didn't feel well oriented in the time-space continuum. Anyway, what would you give this film?
I would give this film 1.5 out of 5. But also shout out to Kelly Jenrette, who played the mother. She was also recently in Uncorked, which I really liked. And Black character actress Regina Taylor is the grandmother. I liked her. She's only in 2 scenes, I think. But
okay. Well, I would also give it 1.5 out of 5 stars. Bye.
Bye.